Okay, we are now on. So I am speaking with Claire Kowalick, and you are. What is your position that you currently hold?
I am the editor, the head editor of the Times Record News, which is the only newspaper in Wichita Falls, Texas.
Okay, that's really fascinating. And so Claire and I go back probably about 23, 24 years, something like that. I don't even know, but
Yeah.
but um, so just to start out, so you actually studied communications in school, right? And
Yeah,
what
yeah. At the University of North Texas in Denton, I went for communication studies, which is more similar to psychology. It's kind of the study of how people communicate in business environments, interpersonal relationships, intrapersonal relationships, all of the ways that people communicate. So that actually translated pretty well into what I do now, which is communicate with the public.
So, but you didn't initially set out to say, oh, I'm going to go into newspaper writing and
No,
editing.
no, I didn't head towards mass communication. Um, really, I have a bit of social anxiety. Meeting people face to face that I don't know stresses me out. So that wasn't on my radar to go make it my job to go out and meet people I don't know. I
So
was
that
thinking more towards being a professor or, some kind of teaching field, but um, here I am, the road of
so
life.
that's very interesting because I imagine that a number of students, particularly those who major in. I mean, I know this is a stereotype, right? Of course, but may lean more towards introvert and being an introvert. So, how do you overcome that anxiety, or how did you overcome that anxiety when
Um,
you?
One thing that oddly has helped me is I studied theater in high school and always was a fan of that, and kind of using that as you are the persona of this journalist, this reporter. Anything they say to you, it's not about you. You don't take things personally. Yeah, they say talk to the badge. You're they're talking to the reporter. They don't have a problem with you personally. They don't know you. If they have a problem, it's with the media or something else. So that kind of allows you to put up that hard exterior and be the journalist, and then be yourself in other parts of your own personal life.
So, what do you find most rewarding about what you do and what you have done? And was it is it what you expected, right, when you first started?
Um, I think I've done a whole lot more than I ever expected. I started there in 2006 writing obituaries, you know, not talking to too many people there. You're just talking to the funeral directors and maybe the families, not so much. And after that my world got a little bit bigger and bigger. I started doing more photography for the paper. I started learning the
Oh,
page layout. Yeah. And all of those things I think are necessary steps. I mean, that was my journey, but all of those parts have become necessary in today's journalism society, because you need to know how to take pictures, and you need to know how to take video, and you need to know how to put your own stories up on the website. You need to know your SEOs and how to make your headlines sound correct for digital, and then you need it to also be applicable to print. So you need to be very diverse. You need to be fast moving, quick thinking, and have it down. So, my progression from whatever that is, 14, 15 years, has led me to be able to do those things pretty well. And now I've only been the editor for going on about 2 months, but you know, I know those roles because I've lived those roles. So now I can use whatever I learned to help my people be the best that they can do. Some of the most rewarding things I think we do are our watchdog journalism is what we call it. We keep an eye on public figures and governments, the city, the county, and keep an eye on the budgets, keep an eye on what people are doing. If somebody's doing something a little shady, we'll dive into the whatever we can get our hands on and look into what they're doing. And I've gotten people that everybody thought they were squeaky clean, outstanding members of society, and I've gotten some
Oh,
stuff and gotten them fired, which
you should come
I
to
kind of
Simmons.
feel bad about, but
Yeah.
it was
We need we need
necessary.
we need some of that journalism down here, certainly,
Yeah.
or in Austin, even better.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but so that actually, so in you saying that, I raised two questions. One is, so you said that you started doing photography. Did you know how to take pictures beforehand, or did you just kind of like jump into it, like okay, I'll do that, and you basically teach yourself as you went along, or
A little bit of both. My dad's a good hobby photographer, so I had done it just for recreation before that. I knew kind of how to what makes a good picture, how you want to frame it. But regular photography and journalism photography are different in some ways. Um, you got to keep, have an eye on having a person or at least a handful of people in your picture, because that makes it more interesting. You don't want them like standing there smiling at the camera, posing with their thumbs up or gripping the podium. You want to see what makes an interesting picture. I think one of the most important things I learned is you want your story to tell a story without the words.
right? Yeah.
And
I,
so
I,
many, and that's even become more important. Some people will look at the picture and
oh yeah.
maybe the headline, that's all as far as they're going to go. And sometimes it's the photographer's job to get those people to that story. They're going to
I mean, yeah.
scroll
I mean,
through Facebook and whatnot, and that's all they're going to see.
well,
So
that's where,
you have to
yeah,
tell the story.
that's where your communications degrees come in, because obviously the research has shown for decades that we're now like a pictographic culture, a visual culture, as opposed to a
Absolutely.
written culture. So, and I tell students all the time that if you're going to incorporate photographs or video into your work, that's wonderful because we have the technology to do it, but you have to treat it like any other piece of evidence,
Mhm.
right? You have to explain to your audience in a way that they can understand the significance of that particular
Yeah.
image.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That has to relate to the story.
yeah, yeah,
So, if your photographer is different than your journalist, sometimes a journalist will do pictures and story and all. But if they're two different people, they have to communicate. The journalist has to talk to their photographer beforehand and say, these are the kind of shots that I'm looking for. I'd really like it this way. And then afterwards, the photographer is gonna take, with the digital camera, you can take as many shots as you want. They may take 50 pictures, and if they're nice and not a prima donna about it, they might talk with the journalist and say, which pictures do you like? And then you're going to want to prioritize which ones would be good for the front page, or, if you're thinking print, or which ones would be good as your main image while, scrolling through Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So, you gotta have a lot of teamwork. It takes a lot of communication, a lot of teamwork. It may be more team oriented than some other writing positions. Everybody thinks of an author in the back room tippity tapping on their typewriter by themselves, but no, pre-COVID, we're all together. We're in our room, no walls. We talk to each other. We yell across the room. We share information, and it's very team oriented.
which incidentally is why, in college course, almost every college course, you got to do at least one group project, and everybody hates it.
Uh, I
You
know, I know,
that, that's the way.
but
Uh, that's the way it goes. But so
yeah,
yeah,
at
yeah,
least in my group, they've slimmed, cutbacks and all, prints dying, yada yada, but we're still here and we have a great team. Our digital subscriptions have actually gone up dramatically since Corona started. I don't know if people just have more time on their hands or they're wanting the COVID information that we have, but digital subscriptions are through the roof. And I'm proud of the team that we have, and I'll do a group project with them anytime, because you get down to the point when you got 6 people in a newsroom, there's no room for slackers. The slackers
mm,
would have been weeded out a long time ago,
right.
and our corporate people can look at your numbers anytime. They can see how many stories you write in a day. They can see what you're writing right then. They can see how many people read your story and how long they spent on your story. And so there's no
That's kind
hiding.
of intimidating,
It is. It really
uh,
is. I mean, we can tell what kind of people read our stories, if they're white or black or old or young. I mean, it's great and
I,
disturbing how much
you know,
information they have on that.
few decades, a couple, like 10, 15 years ago, I was in Illinois and I got featured in an article about some disability issues. And I have never seen the insults like I saw in the people from the public, like commenting on the articles on the website of the newspaper.
Oh yeah,
They just
that's
crazy.
normal.
It's like these people, like that's their life, is to get on the it's
Oh
crazy,
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
And I,
We have regulars
yeah,
that's what they do. They never say anything positive, but they're always there.
so you have to be thick skinned if you're going to be a journalist as well. I mean,
You got to
uh,
be thick-skinned or don't read the comments, one or the other.
yeah, and so the kind of the takeaway about the photography is, if you want to advance your career, just say yes. Like, hey, I've got we need this, and you're like, okay, I'll
Absolutely.
do it. I'll do it.
That's my secret of life, is just say yes to whatever they ask you to do.
It's
You
pretty much
know,
what I've been doing for the last 22 years in
yeah,
my career as
yeah.
well. Uh, so that's really great. So there's a couple other questions. One is, you mentioned that you deal with um, issues of like faulty expenditures, questionable stuff, political issues, et cetera, et cetera. And I imagine that over the past couple of years, that's become even a little bit more delicate, right? How do you, as a journalist, try to deliver as unbiased a piece as possible, and how do you kind of pull yourself back, and really try to present um, the quote unquote facts about the situation?
Yeah, it can be a delicate balance. I don't know what it's like on the national level or even the state level, but it's actually easier on the local level because I know these people. I see them, I know their names, I know where they live, and some of them are not friends, but we're friendly and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
understand each other's roles, and they know me well enough that they know that they can trust me, and they know that it's my job to say what is true. And it may look bad, it may look good, but I will say what is true. And so I think on the local level, a lot of it is just building trust. Don't screw them over. Don't pull a quote that wasn't what they meant. Don't print something when they said this is off the record. Don't make your headline make them look bad. Just don't be misleading. You be trustworthy, and they will share more information with you. And so there's different approaches to it. Sometimes we pull kind of a good cop, bad cop. We'll have somebody that's your regular every day, goes to the city council meetings, goes to the county commissioners meetings, kind of your snore, day-to-day work. And then you got somebody else that is pulling all the Freedom of Information Act requests and is checking the emails and is checking whatever else they can to see what the truth is. So those may be two different people if you need be. It can be the same person. I've done stuff with the city that, I was still the main city council person and go to all those meetings and whatnot, but I was still looking into things. I was trying to remember. Oh, there was a situation with water meters back when we had manual water meters. There was a few residents that were saying that they felt like they were not getting their meters properly read, that they were just rounding them up and moving along because the meter readers were lazy or something like that. And the city was like, no, we totally don't do that. And eventually I had the information sitting here in front of me saying it's right here. And they're like, well, okay, maybe that happens every once in a while. So, I mean, don't play gotcha, be be trustworthy, and don't be mean about it. You're just trying to get the information, and if they're not hiding anything, they're not going to be cranky about it for the most part. And you may be able to glean something from that, just their attitude about the situation. I have the mayor. I know his cell phone. I can text him any time of day or night. He's totally transparent. Even when there's like lawsuits against him, he'll call me and he's like, okay, this is what that was all about. And if they're honest with me, I will tell honest, wonderful stories. And if they're not honest with me, I will tell what I can get. You never guess about a situation. You don't guess what's going to happen. You don't say, you think, you don't make assumptions.
I
That's not
steered.
any of our job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have an opinion. I've
So that would be the difference between journalism and infotainment.
Absolutely, yes. We don't
Yes.
have opinions about news stories. If
Mhm.
there's an opinion page, those people can have an opinion. But news stories, we have a code of ethics that we have to go through training every year. We have to sign a code of ethics. And part of that is that you don't influence your opinion one way or the other, if it's something political or not. You are just, I think of it like a mirror, you reflect what it is in an interesting, approachable way for the public. You don't put yourself in there. That's what we try
Wonderful.
to do.
That is extremely valuable on a number of levels for the students who will be some of the students who will be watching this. Hopefully, I'm just really curious because this is a time in American history like none that we've lived through, and anybody else who's alive right now. What's it been like, having your job and being in the position that you're in, and essentially being a hub of information during this pandemic? What's that been like?
It's been interesting. It's been an interesting ride. And I mean, even before the pandemic, of course, the last 4 years have been different for journalism than it was before. It kind of used to be, the shining star. Ooh, you're a journalist, you're a reporter. That's awesome. You're the editor of the newspaper. What a noble profession. And further and further along, it was kind of a war on the media. We've had protests outside of our building with their little picket signs and everything. And we went out there, we brought them water bottles.
That's
We went
great.
out
That's
there
cool.
and we talked to them.
That's cool.
And there was many people that were changed once they saw our faces, and that we weren't out here to get them. We're not in there with little devil horns out to get you people or whoever you think. We're just normal people. We asked, what do you think? What's your issues? And we explained our process, and they were nicer. But we still have people that don't believe it. They think this way about the media or that way. But I feel like there's change coming. I think the corona epidemic has shown, and all of the things that going on, all of the racial divides, all the political divides going on, have shown the importance of journalism. We were there's first responders, police, all the important people, but behind them, journalists have always been there. We've gone through training on, how to wear a bulletproof vest, how to put on your gas mask, what to do if somebody's shooting at you. We go through those kinds of things because we're going to be there and tell the story for the people because it's important. We take that seriously, and it's not a game. It's not any conspiracy. We do that for the public. That's what we love to do. And like our newspaper has provided all the information on the coronavirus for free. Some of our stories you have to have a subscription to the newspaper, but everything about the coronavirus we provide for free, even if they're not a subscriber. So we think of that as a public service. Information about how many vaccines are available now, daily figures, all of that have been important to us, and we provide new information on that every day. And we have a really good health department up here, and they've been very transparent with us. They tell us how many cases there are every day, how many deaths, and as much information as they can. So some places may be more difficult than others, but I think we have a really good local level transparency between the government entities and the media for the most part. So I've been working at home since March, and so that's different in some ways, but it's sort of the same. I mean, everything that I could do in the office, I can do at home. Besides get to my people more easily. I can't yell across the room, "Hey Trish, are you on this story?" I gotta do a Zoom meeting or call her up or text her or something else. But I miss my team, but for the most part, it's just the same. We do as much work, if not more, than we did before. We put everything in, it goes to the design, and then it comes back and we still print it at our press in Wichita Falls. We still get a great local press, and of course they have to come into work, but everybody that can stay home, we encourage them to stay home until the COVID numbers are better.
So how do you figure out? I mean, or rather, I mean, because there's more than one answer to this question, but a lot of students who hopefully will be watching this are going to be looking at or considering what makes a credible source, what qualifies as a credible source. And there are so many different forms of media out there, even in print media. It's, so varied. And
Yeah.
so how do you identify a credible, balanced source, particularly when like there's almost nothing, there are almost no journalistic firewalls left, like
It's tough. Yeah,
yeah,
I imagine it's tough in this day and age. If you're looking at everything on digital, it looks like everything's equal, but it is very much not. There's secondary, third sources that use this article, that use that article. Your job, you want to get down to the as far back to the beginning as you can. Peel back those layers. What did that article get back to, and what did that get back to? And it may get down to the raw data from some university publication, and that'd be great. If you can get back down that far to some obviously academic reliable sources. If not that, you got your sources that you're using if you're doing some research like that, or in-person sources. If I want an expert on engineering, I'll go find me an engineer in town, or whatever. I'll go to the person with the most knowledge about those things. If I'm doing a story about the water department, I'll talk to Daniel Nix, who is the head of the water department. So that's always great if you have a face to those things. Reliable sources, yeah, look at the name of the site. Is that a well-known name to most people? The CNN or something like that, even though they will use stories, they use stories and all of that. So you want to see, is this their primary story, or did they use that information based off another story? You want the closest to the source as possible. You want the actual newspaper or whatever that interviewed those peoples, not the next site that stole their information. Because like the game of gossip, when you're whispering in everybody's ear, the farther it gets away, the farther away from the truth you are. So I mean, it's hard to explain. It's kind of become second knowledge to me, because I'm used to doing those things. But kind of do the research. There's some good graphs and charts about what news sources are more biased, less biased, and more neutral. Public, like NPR, public media is pretty reliable. Things that have opinions. You don't want your data to come from things that have opinions.
right.
News stories that have opinions. Lox News, even CNN sometimes. If it
MSN, yeah,
MSNBC, absolutely.
yeah.
Look at, they usually have to say if something is an opinion. They'll have the headline, and then they'll have what we call the byline, is the person that wrote it, and it may say opinion writer, or it may say opinion for the USA Today or whatever. Usually there, or at the end where we call a tagline with the information about the author, they're going to say something about it being an opinion, if they're decently trustworthy source. But a lot of people skip past that, and I get called, a liberal blah, blah, blah for the articles in my paper. And I'm like, well, which one are you referring to? And it'll be like a letter to the editor. Letters to
You have
the
no control
editor
of it.
are written
Yeah.
by the public. And
Right. Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that's one of the, one of you members of the public. And we print every letter to the editor, no matter
Every letter to the editor.
every letter to the editor, unless it is
Wow.
a specific threat against somebody's life,
Wow.
we print every letter to the editor. There's a whole ton of stuff I don't agree with, but we will print each and every one of them. So yeah, I've had people gripe about that, saying, why you print that kind of thing? You wouldn't print mine. I was like, did you turn in something? Well, no. Or something that is clearly an opinion piece, marked opinion. I always like to market opinion somewhere, at least 3 places. I'll mark it in the headline, I'll mark it down below, I'll mark it by the byline, because I don't want them to be confused. And it used to be a lot easier when you have a physical newspaper. You look at the front page, says news. You look at the next page, says news. Somewhere in the middle, you got pages say editorial or opinion. And you knew where things stand. But this day and age, you're just looking at everything splashed out there all at once, and it can be more difficult to differentiate. But read more news, just keep reading more and more from different sources. Don't get all your information from one source, and you'll kind of get the gist of what is an opinion versus what is not.
The phantasmagoria that is just Google is probably not the best idea. The only, really what makes academic institutions today are not the physical libraries so much, but rather the databases, to which the library subscribes. For example, like our school was officially founded in 2009. So what we've been using as a library is not, I don't mean to disparage our librarians are great, but this physical space is not really, it's not an academic research library, but, we subscribe to all the appropriate databases and such. So for example, if any of you watching this actually wanted to read some of Claire's work, you could go on LexisNexis and you could actually pull it up, and, it had newspapers from all over the world you can pull up and things like that. So finding these sources, as students enrolled in most academic institutions, you have access to that, and that's your real power, right? This is the ability to access this material. And so, but then of course, what are you going to do with it? And that's where your skill and your creativity and so forth come in. But okay, I don't want to keep you on the hook too long here, but do you have any like parting advice, anything that you would anything you would give to any students interested, any students say graduating with soon to graduate with like a English degree, communication degree, basically anything other than STEM, because like with STEM, it's kind of, and there's been a lot written about this, right? That with STEM degrees, typically people do internships and all these things, and they pretty much know, they pretty much have their track set for them as soon as they graduate. It's different for people in the humanities, right? So what would you speak to that about?
I would say being able to communicate both verbally and in written form is the most important thing that you can do. That's all that, that's all that you have. What is in your brain is not going to be communicated unless you speak it or you write it down. So, it doesn't matter, even in the STEM, even in science and math, you're going to have to write a publication someday to talk about your scientific work. You're going to have to write something, no matter what you choose in life, you're going to have to write and be able to communicate yourself well, even if it's just a cover letter to your resume to get to that job that you want. But everything includes writing. And if you can write clean, precise, and intelligibly, then it will get you a lot farther in life. And one little mistake here and there in your resume, one little mistake here and there in a paper
absolutely.
can just devastate anything. So Read, write. Once you write it, read it again, get somebody else to read it, get somebody else to read it, and get everybody's opinion before you send it. Because once, in this day and age, once you send something out there, if it's going online, it's going to everybody in the world potentially. It's going to millions, if not billions of people. And it can be even further to rein that in if you made some kind of mistake. So just work on that. It is important, it is important that you can write and not how you text, the word YOU is not you. So being able to communicate yourself.
Understand your audience, right? So
Understand your audience, know who
Yeah.
you're talking to. You can talk to your buddies like that. If you're talking to, the commander general at the army post, you're going to have to communicate more clearly. So yeah, absolutely. Know your audience, who you're talking to. And it's a lot easier if you don't have to diversify that too much. Just do it correctly all the time and, learn good English, reading, writing all the time. But yeah, I mean, what we do is not rocket science. It's not the hardest. It is something that takes work. But you all in college right now, you might be working on getting papers fleshed out so that they are 10, 20, 30 pages. It's kind of the opposite with what we do. We're making it as short as possible so you can get as much information as
That's
possible.
what I like. I like to trim stuff down. I don't like.
Yeah. So that, I went to college, grad school, all that, and I'm as used to writing as fluffy as possible so I could get more pages out of it. But just the opposite, I can't get away with that now. You got to get all the information out there in 3 or 4 or 5 paragraphs. And what one of my professors in communication studies, he says he wants it short and pithy,
Yeah.
hits. And leave out all
yeah.
the fluff. Make it as short as possible, but still the required information.
I was taught in undergrad and graduate school the University of Washington method, which is you get everything that you possibly need to say to make your discussion in one single spaced page, no margins.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I was taught how to write. So when somebody asked me to do like a 20 to 30 page thing, I'm like, what? Like, for this publication that I just was a part of, they asked me to do like, I think it was originally like 700 words. We changed it up or whatever, but I like busted it out. And then I was like, how did you do that? Like, how did you do that so quickly? Well, you just take it, because I had this longer piece and I just X'd out, all this stuff. And I was like, here you go.
But anyway, there you go.
Yeah. So that's all, that's all really, really important stuff. And I definitely useful for, hopefully, the students will be watching this, and probably more apropos to a lot of what they're doing, or what they may aspire to do. The other interview that I have on YouTube for them to view is with a game designer who's also an English professor, which is cool, but it may not be the path that they take. Whereas some may, want to go into journalism. I mean, what you spoke of in terms of what's important as far as the market, and hireability, employability, it matches with this current statistics, because the average amount of time that an employer will give a resume is 7 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
7 seconds.
All right.
So, and that's after, I don't want to scare anybody who's watching this, but that's after they run it through the computer. Yep. to catch, does this have the buzzwords we're looking for? And yep. And then you get 7 seconds. And then if you pass that round, then, and so on. So by the time you actually get a call for a first interview, your resume has probably been, or CV or whatever document, has probably been looked at, 4 or 5 times at least. So that's something to really think about, and especially in a market that's flooded. And and I'm very well aware, and I'm evidence of this. There are so many people out there with graduate degrees in English or graduate degrees in communication, graduate degrees in the quote unquote soft sciences, or however you want to say it. So, or humanities. And so you got to have something that will differentiate you. So a very nicely done document like that is really good. The other thing that's interesting, sociologically, and you spoke to this, is that the whole stereotype of like in Office Space, the Stephen Root character, this is my stapler, that stapler, the guy is sitting in the basement with that ends up burning down the building because they took his stapler or whatever. And or the IT guy, that's the total introvert geek or whatever. That is a thing of the past. That's a stereotype of the past, because even in, like you were saying, even in the IT fields, the people will edge out somebody, unless they're just a genius, right? What will edge them out is the ability to communicate. And so employers, if you ask them more or less universally what the two qualities are that they look at in an employee, and this is entry level employee, right? It's going to be communication is one, and the other one is show up on time.
Yep, reliability.
They say a lot of companies will say, we can train them to do everything else. We cannot train somebody to show up on time. In other words, you can't train somebody to have a work ethic.
Right.
And they expect people to have, to be able to read and write and communicate. Mm-hmm. And so that actually, adds credence, right, to what a lot of you were doing with obtaining English degrees. And I've had students over the past couple of years who are getting an English degree, and they're taking that immediately to officer training in the military, which I think is fabulous, because that's, mm-hmm. when you're and actually some of the strongest writing students I've had in freshman writing have actually been retired NCOs. And they because they write a lot of reports on a lot of troops, so yep. They know, so they may not know like technical terms for everything, like, what a preposition is or anything like that, but they can essentially do it, Mm-hmm. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to reiterate what you were saying, that is that your communication skills, one way or another, will be used throughout whatever career that you choose. And the fact that you, as an English major or as a communications major and so on, you have these skills, and with these skills come an ability to think critically, right? And that's also part of what a journalist does, because the journalist, for lack of a better term, right, to be a great journalist, you've got to have a fantastic bullshit detector, right? Even when you're looking at when you're looking at the sources, like we were talking about, right? You're looking at that source going, there's no way. It might be the slickest website on the face of the earth, but you look at what they're saying and you're like, no. Yeah. And so
look for 2 or 3 other places that also say that, and then maybe,
Yeah. And that's especially true right now with COVID. There was something that was said at a town hall here a few nights ago. I have a lot of friends who are older than I am and retired, and so they have time to do things like watch town halls. Like sit there. Oh, I just watched the town hall. But anyway, there was this doctor on there, and who made a statement about the COVID vaccine that I thought was just completely outlandish, and everyone everyone in the conversation thought that there's no that just can't be. But it wasn't so outlandish. That's the thing, is it wasn't so outlandish. It wasn't like one of these conspiracy, things like, they're trying to give us this vaccine to rewrite the God gene. Well, first of all, if you knew what the God gene was, you wouldn't even say that, because it has nothing to do with God. But anyway, the point being, there's some crazy conspiracy stuff on Facebook. You can just completely get lost in all that crap. Unfortunately, it kind of pains me to say I have friends that send me that stuff, because you would think that I wouldn't have friends that would, send me that stuff, but I do. Anyway, The point being is that, it actually sounded, what this person said was somewhat alarming, but it actually, because this person was a doctor, and it actually sounded, somewhat scientific. So we were a little bit concerned. We have a friend whom I won't mention by name, but he is a founder of not founder, but he runs a medical school program, right? And is a very accomplished doctor. He basically said, nope, that's not true. It's like the data doesn't bear that out. The only reason why they said that is because that's only as far as the data goes up to at this point. But that doesn't mean that, and so he like laid out all of the data and the,
Yeah.
fairly succinctly, but so to find out the
Mm.
truth about something, or something that is the more probable truth, right?
Mm.
You do have to search out those sources, and you have to be able to think, well, that that logically just doesn't make sense. And sometimes, right, truth can be stranger than fiction, but
Mm.
but more often than
Yeah.
not, there
And I
can be
think
a
it's sad that people have to do that these days. That shouldn't
yeah.
be what people have to do. They should have some reliable sources. It- Your local news is about as reliable as you're going to get. We're your neighbors.
Mhm.
We are not having any alien reptilian agenda going on here. They don't pay us enough. So, get to as local as possible to get your sources.
I try to go with
Everybody is not an epidemiologist, a statistician, and they shouldn't have to be. There should be these reliable sources that people can turn to and not have to guess and not trust anybody. And then that makes the world a scary place, and it shouldn't have to be.
I think in larger cities it's more complicated
Yeah,
because the news sources are become very politicized,
it's true.
you know, and so it's in
Time political newspaper.
San Antonio is just strange because it is a very large city,
Yeah,
but it seems like everyone knows everybody's business. It's like you can't, it's like you may be 5 people removed, but you know somebody who knows somebody, which is
yeah.
odd, extremely odd in a city that's
Small big
this
city. Yeah,
in a city this size, but it is strangely true.
yeah.
Um, so,
They have a good
but
newspaper.
um, I try to I'd stick with NPR and Associated Press when I can. Like on election night, for example, I didn't say anything until Associated Press called it. That's you know.
Yep,
Uh,
that's pretty
but
reliable. Yeah.
anyway, it's we've been on for a while, so I'm gonna turn off our recorder and bid you officially good evening. Thank you so much for taking this time to speak to my students, and hopefully they'll get something out of this, whether they're students who are graduating with English or communication degrees, if they're people who are going to be writing profiles where they're like investigating
Mhm.
something, or if they're going to be actually writing reports where this sort of unbiased position,
Mhm.
or to be as unbiased as you can, is paramount. So
Absolutely.
hopefully they get something out of that, and you certainly have much more authority than I do. So so anyway, thank you very, very much.
Thank you
Okay.
for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, let me see if I can figure out how to stop this. Okay, stop.